Have you ever seen people wearing headphones on their podcast and you're like, do I need that too? Is that necessary if I start my own? Because it's worth figuring out if you are going to be doing this in person or remotely. The needs of you or your guest needing headphones actually varies depending on that context. So in this video, I'm going to break down why people use headphones in the first place so you can make an informed decision on whether it's right for you and your show. In a live in-person recording session, headphones are typically used for live monitoring. So the guest or the producer, the host, they can all kind of hear what the audience is going to hear. And if you have kind of, let's say, static, or you have somebody eating in the background, right? You can typically hear some of those things being picked up to where it would save you time in post-production. You wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, somebody was eating a bag of Doritos the entire, hour that we were actually recording. Instead of it being a surprise and something you have to fix in post, you could probably identify some of those issues right away while you are filming. This is typically more useful in that in-person scenario if you do not have a producer, a camera operator, or somebody that's helping you with this. Because if you take a look on certain shows, you'll notice that, hey, sometimes they don't even have a microphone, right? They don't have something like this, or they don't have headphones. How are they making it work? The only scenarios for in-person podcasts where you would not use headphones is going to be if you have a producer or a camera operator that is basically on set. Their job is to make sure that, hey, the sound is good, there's nothing funky going on, and that makes it so that you don't have to actually worry about it. Versus if it's, maybe just you and you've got all the cameras set up, you've got your headphones on, the guest has their headphones on, it's kind of useful for you to kind of know if something's being messed up. But you'll notice that on bigger and bigger shows, a lot of times they're not wearing it, and it's because there's typically 1 to freaking 5 people behind the scenes that are actually in charge of making sure that stuff is crisp. So it kind of eliminates the need for the host or the guest to be wearing those headphones. Now, if you are going to be recording your podcast remotely, this changes things a little bit. In almost all cases, it is more beneficial for you to be actually wearing some kind of headphones, especially in a remote setting. And the reason for this is because if you do not, what's going to happen is there's feedback. So you might have the volume up a couple notches too high, and when your guest is actually speaking, that sound can be picked up in your own microphone. So that can be something that, yes, it's fixable, but it's kind of annoying and you want to avoid it if you can in the first place. Now, if you are using softwares like Zoom or Riverside.fm are actually pretty good with being able to cancel out any of that feedback or background noise, but you have to make sure that that is typically turned on. So if you notice when you log on to Riverside and you try to join the studio, it's going to ask you, are you wearing headphones or are you not wearing headphones? And depending on that answer, it's going to turn on or off the echo cancellation. Even though this feature is pretty good, you don't want to fully rely on it because sometimes these automatic features are jacked up a little too high, right? It's going to be a little too much of an effect applied. And so to keep it raw, if you really want, sometimes put the headphones on in the remote setting. You probably won't regret it. And then of course, whether you're recording in person or remotely, one of the things is really a stylistic benefit, right? So it looks cool when you've got headphones on sometimes and it signals, hey, this is a podcast or this is a podcast clip. It's not something that I made specifically for this. And that signal can sometimes be useful before someone consumes it because it will be consumed with a totally different frame. Versus if there was no, let's say, podcast mic and there was no headphones, okay, cool, I might assume that you're really quickly recording this video, right? And it's not going to be highly edited. Now, whether you are recording your podcast in person or it's remote, the one thing that stays constant is style. So that is now that technology is becoming better and better, where there's like better echo cancellation and things that just weren't here like 5 years ago even. You have the choice to go, okay, does this look good or not? And in some cases, having headphones on is similar to having a podcast mic. It gives off the signal that, hey, this is a podcast or this is a talking head video, versus if you remove the podcast mic and you remove the headphones, right? It might be perceived with a different context. But that signal, I find, is sometimes very useful because you frame for the viewer that, hey, this may not be a crazy high edited like Mr. Beast video. This is a podcast. This is a podcast clip. It's going to be a lot of talking and a lot of dialogue. Because I know for me, certain headphones that I've used in the past are just a little too big on my head. And if I can avoid it, I try to. And that doesn't mean that I don't wear something like AirPods. A lot of times I'll still resort to that. But the bigger over-ear headphones, even though I might use that for editing or, post-production stuff, I won't necessarily always wear it when I'm recording like this. So that's another thing to point out. So depending on the context that you're recording in and how you feel about how it looks on you and whatnot, you can go ahead with investing in them. Like I said, AirPods are pretty good. I personally like the original AirPods, not the Pros, and I actually have both. And I just find that, it's a little looser. It's a little like I can still hear the outside environment, which I kind of want in this case sometimes, right? I find that the Pros are a little too much noise canceling. But let's say that you are like, you know what, I want to invest in some nicer headphones. If you're looking to invest in over-ear headphones that are specially wired, because some things you'll notice, you can't attach Bluetooth headphones to audio mixer, right? So in order to hear something that's coming straight from the audio mixer versus, let's say, your computer, you would need something that has wires like this that could go directly in there. So it is very beneficial sometimes to have over-ear and wired headphones that just reduce the likelihood of picking up unwanted frequencies and noises and things like that. But I've used this for literally hours and hours on end of editing and things like that, and it's super comfortable. You would think that it would be annoying after a little while, but the muffs are pretty comfy. And you'll notice that this is the exact one that is used on a lot of the famous shows now, right? So Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard, you'll notice that they have this exact pair, but they have typically the gray colored muffs or whatever. But just so you can see, I know I claim that they're sometimes big on my head. I'll show you what it looks like so you can judge for yourself. So it's not too bad, right? But sometimes I've had the Sennheiser ones that Joe Rogan has on his podcast. I've used that in the past, and those have a little, that it has like antlers, you know what I mean? Like it's like curved and it looks a little funny. And so it's typically not a big deal, but if you have a smaller head like mine, I've just had to kind of worry about that kind of stuff in the past, even with hats, right? Hats are a lot of times too big on my head. So you just want to consider that for your case. And again, it's a stylistic issue once you have determined whether it's necessary based on the remote or in-person recording format that you're going to be doing. And if you found this useful, make sure to check out some of the free and paid tools that I have in the description below. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you on the next one.